countless factors that can lead to your death. As senior coroner, I deal with nearly 4,500 fatalities a year.
The coroner can make any inquiries necessary to find a cause of death.
The police act on behalf of the coroner. If the coroner asks, then we do it.
With unprecedented access, we follow the coroner's full investigation.
Somebody somewhere will want to know that this person's died.
We're taking pieces of the jigsaw to formulate a cause of death.
From the moment of arrival in the mortuary to the final conclusion of the inquest.
All rise.
I'm sorry that you're attending court under these circumstances, and I appreciate that the evidence that you'll hear today may be distressing.
I feel like no big event happened to cause this.
I need answers. I need to know what happened that night.
If you die here, if it's violent, unnatural, or of an unknown cause, it's my job to find out how.
Steph, she was loving daughter, loving sister, good mum. She just was funny. Like, she was someone who made you laugh. She touched a lot of people, just with how kind she was. Her personality just drew you in. I can't even tell you, like, what she was like, because you have to just meet her for yourself. My phone started ringing, so I answered it.
Well, what time was this at?
6 o'clock, was it? 5, 6-ish. So I answered the phone, she went, I'm just letting you know, Steph's been took in an ambulance, but she's okay. So I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? She's not had nothing to drink and nothing to eat. So she said, ring Carl. So I said, Carl, what's going on? He said, I'm in the ambulance with her now. She's fine, stop worrying, don't worry. She'll be home tomorrow, tail between her legs. 10 to 1, I get a phone call, it's a Blackburn number, and it was a nurse from Blackburn Hospital, and she said, you need to come with your mum and your sister to the hospital now because Stephanie's really unwell. So I just said to the nurse, is she going to die? And she said, I can't tell you that, but you just need to come straight away.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
Yes, she is.
What's the address of the emergency, please?
It's Witton Park in Blackburn. I'm a paramedic at an event. We've got a patient, got a heart rate of 172.
Sorry, is she awake?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, do you know her name?
It's Stephanie.
I've received a referral from the police this morning for a young lady who's 32 years old. She has been at a music festival at the weekend and she's been there with some friends and her partner, and it is believed she's taken half a tablet of ecstasy. She started to become short of breath and not really knowing what time of day it is or where she was. She has been treated for dehydration. She's stayed in overnight and sadly she has passed away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass all the information on to the coroner and I'm going to request a CT scan in order to hopefully ascertain a cause of death. I'm also going to be requesting toxicology, and this will allow for any alcohol or substances to be identified.
A CT post-mortem scan is required to try and establish a cause of death, but first an external examination needs to take place.
We'll look for any marks externally on her
We will record any medical interventions that happened in the A&E department. So I'm writing down now that she's got a line in her left hand, she's got a line in her left elbow, and then she's got these two in her right hand. They've tried really hard to keep her alive.
It is really, really sad. This is a young girl who's got a life ahead of her. She's got a young child. People go to festivals like this to have a good time.
I'm just going to clean her up a little bit before we put her in a sheet and a shroud. We always try to get them as clean as we possibly can, just for the dignity.
Coroner's officers are investigating all possibilities around Stephanie's death, including her medical history.
Just looking at a GP summary, I wonder if she had high cholesterol. Stephanie's father, he's died quite an early age, at 52 years old, suddenly and unexpectedly. They've also 2 cousins. They have recently had heart attacks and survived. So Stephanie, her death may be related to something to do with her heart, given this history.
It is the coroner's responsibility to look into possible genetic conditions that may affect other family members.
Hi Susan, it's Becky at the coroner's office.
Hello, Becky.
So, because Stephanie's father had a sudden unexpected death at the age of 52 and he had high cholesterol, what they've advised is for all first-degree relatives to arrange with their GP to have the cholesterol levels checked.
My other daughter's had a test.
She has had, your other daughter has had a test. And have they come back high?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Interestingly, Stephanie's 2 sisters, they have got high cholesterol. So there's a good chance that Stephanie has, if toxicology comes back negative, this could be a natural cause of death, given the medical history of the family.
It's the ifs and buts, isn't it? Was there something else going on with Stephanie? We knew that she was unwell the week of the festival, but Steph being Steph, she will go in no matter what. So was that a contributor of how things happened?
I've just come to collect some admission bloods for Stephanie Thorpe. All right, thanks.
32-year-old Stephanie Thorpe became ill at a music festival and was transferred to Royal Blackburn Hospital, where she later died.
Coroner's officers have requested that the bloods in blood sciences be looked at to see what's in them.
As well as toxicology being taken, Stephanie has been transported to Royal Preston Hospital for a post-mortem CT scan.
So I've got Stephanie Thorpe.
Yeah.
15291.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Due to the complexities of the case, it is being handed over to a senior coroner's officer.
The circumstances are that she's taken ecstasy and she was drinking alcohol. It's been reported that it was very hot on that day and possible dehydration has been mentioned.
So when she became ill, did she go to the medical tent at the festival?
Yeah, she went to the medical tent and then she was transferred via ambulance to Royal Blackburn. So there is a history of high cholesterol in the family, and there have been some sudden deaths, including Stephanie's father. So that's been looked into as well.
Who's it? Who's that?
Mommy?
Mommy.
Wow. Mommy.
mummy again.
Hiya, Mummy.
Hiya.
Hiya, hubby. No.
Obviously, I think he does know something's not right. He's not ate for the past 2 days. He's ate today. He had some cereal and some jam and toast and that.
Mummy.
When we got into the festival, we was together for a little bit. She went one way or whatever, and I went another way, and I was with all the lads or whatever, and she was with her friends. And then later on, must have been about 4:30, 5 o'clock or something, and she was just like sat down on the hill, and then it got to like 6 o'clock. And I always remember this because she kept saying, "We need to go and get the minibus, we need to go and get the minibus, it's 11 o'clock. I said, "What do you mean it's 11 o'clock? She said, "The minibus is there, it's 11 o'clock. I said, "It's not, Steph, it's 6 o'clock, look, it's on my watch." So I said, "Right, just sit down, go and get you some water and then you'll be fine." Obviously they didn't have no waters in the bars, did they? It was like an half an hour wait or 40-minute wait or whatever for the water. When I got back, a couple of the lads had some water there. I was trying giving her some more, she wouldn't drink it. They took her down to the medical tent and lay her on the bed and put her on the drip straight away. I was just... I had hold of her hand. Said, "Steph, come on." Just didn't seem real at all. I don't think it's hit me yet. I know when it does, it is going to hit me hard. Obviously, I've got to stay strong for him.
Smile for Mummy. Yeah. Hello.
Today we've got Stephanie Thorpe. She's come to us from Blackburn Mortuary. So we'll start off by scanning her from top to bottom. So looking through the initial scans, there's nothing too obvious standing out, but we'll continue and scan a head in more detail and also a heart. We'll look for any calcification in there as well. I imagine in a case like this, the toxicology will be quite useful.
In Blackburn, police have been called to a house where a man has been found deceased. He has been transferred to Royal Blackburn Mortuary.
Lancashire Police have received a report from a concerned neighbour who hadn't seen this gentleman for a few weeks, so contacted the police.
Right, it's in number 16.
Police have attended the forced entry to the house and sadly found this gentleman deceased on the floor in the living room. There is a quite severe decomposition present, which would suggest perhaps that he's been there for quite some time. One of the things that the officers did find in the address were multiple empty packets of cocodamol tablets, so that's quite significant.
Do you want some scissors for his top?
His top, yeah.
We don't usually cut clothing off because we pass clothing over to the families, but in this case we are needing to cut his clothes off that he's wearing.
Yeah. There's no sign of any scars or injuries to his face or head. He's that sort of plasticized decomposition rather than green.
When the human body starts to decompose, it can decompose in various ways. It can either liquefy or it can mummify. But in either case, you are losing significant amounts of information as to what this person has died from. And whichever approach you take, CT post-mortem or invasive post-mortem, you cannot extract information that's not there. You cannot perform toxicology when there are no samples left.
It's not something that everybody could do. I think it's one of the jobs that you wouldn't know whether you would be able to do it until you actually got in the role.
In order for the coroner to authorise that the deceased funeral can go ahead, he has to be satisfied with the identification. The police officer who attended the address has confirmed that there was a number of letters in the address and also an unopened box with the gentleman's name and address on it. Those items that have been found at the address, they are only items that assist with the ID. They're circumstantial, and they are items that can be moved either from or to the address. We need one primary ID, one of dental, fingerprints or DNA. These are things that come from the deceased body, and confirm who the deceased is.
Whilst coroner's officers search for dental records, fingerprint officers have arrived at the mortuary to try and establish the man's identity.
So I'm going to put a bit of fingerprint powder on now. Have a look with the magnifying glass, see what you can see. What do you think? Oh, I might get a bit there.
If you can clean that up a little.
These are the records that we hold on file, fingerprints, and this is the name that we've been given by the officers. All we just need is one area to satisfy us as fingerprint officers that we can make a positive identification. It's not looking good, but we've got to try.
Four days after Stephanie Thorpe died, friends and family have come together.
The balloons are in memory of Stephanie. And celebrating her life, showing how much she was loved. There was honestly not one bad boy in that girl's body. She was just a pure soul.
She was loved by everyone that she ever met.
Yeah. Really didn't know how special she was. And like the amount of people who's been here today just shows how many people loved her and how amazing she was.
She was loved from all over.
She was loved from all over.
Once seen, never forgotten.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Wow. Love you both.
A radiologist is looking at Stephanie Thorpe's CT scan to try and establish a cause of death.
She was described as being confused and disorientated. Now that clearly could be due to alcohol and drugs, but it's important from a radiological perspective to exclude an alternative cause for that, which may be obviously something, pathology within the brain, for example, bleed or a stroke, and we can't see any acute pathology here in the brain. It's important to look through the lungs just to make sure there's no evidence of underlying lung disease. Some people can have underlying cardiac abnormalities that they're completely unaware of. In this case, there's nothing abnormal in terms of the radiological appearances of the heart. Scan is that of a normal, healthy 32-year-old woman with no underlying pathologies detectable.
The coroner has ordered further investigations into Stephanie's death, including toxicology and an invasive post-mortem.
Stephanie Thorpe appears to have possibly taken half a tablet of ecstasy. This may be a drugs-related death, but if you do not then consider an invasive post-mortem, you may lose the information if you release the body for the funeral.
There's always a genetic possibility in young people who die quickly and unexpectedly. We will be sending material off for genetic analysis, which can be used at a later date for genetic studies. And we need a pot for the histology. I'm taking some samples now to look at under the microscope. And I'm going to take samples from the kidneys, liver, heart and lungs to send off for genetic testing.
We was in a state of shock because it's gone from, oh, she's okay, she'll be home in the morning, she's just got dehydration, she's got heat exhaustion, to she's in organ failure.
I knew she was run down and she was unwell. She had a bit of a bad chest, didn't she? I was saying, don't go, like, you know, but obviously she had 4 more fear of missing out. Yeah. So she wanted to go and she found out that K class were playing, it was one of her favourite acts. She said, oh, I'm definitely going. So we knew she was obviously a bit under the weather. So I don't think that's helped.
To go from walking in that festival, because I've seen the videos, but walking in happy and laughing with everybody, that was like at what, dinner time? That's what I can't get my head around.
Obviously there's something gone on with this lady which has caused damage. For example, the liver has changed colour. Things look abnormal, but I can't see the cause of it yet. And that's why I'm sampling the tissue, and obviously we've sent off for toxicology.
The coroner's office has new information on the Stephanie Thorpe case.
So we received some witness statements of people who were present at the festival. It's confirmed that Stephanie was able to purchase a bottle of water earlier on in the day. However, it is reported that the festival ran out of water for a period of time later on. So Stephanie was dehydrated. What we need to determine is whether the dehydration was caused or contributed to a death. Depending on whether that's caused or contributed will result in a conversation with Dr. Aidley, who will then possibly refer this back to the police for them to investigate further.
Coroner's officers are investigating the death of 32-year-old Stephanie Thorpe, who died after becoming seriously ill at a local music festival.
I've spoken with the police and they've highlighted a couple of concerns. One is that the weather was 26 degrees on the day of the festival, and there's a question as to whether there was enough access to water at the festival for the people that attended.
So first, could you speak to the family and friends and see whether she had water and if she was drinking? Could you contact the A&E doctors and the ITU doctors at Royal Blackburn Hospital and see what they've got to say, either on biochemical tests or on physical examination as to whether she's dehydrated.
Okay.
I'd also be grateful if you can have a look. It'll be something like the Health and Safety Executive for guidance for provision of water at large events or festivals. If you could find that, I'd be grateful.
Okay, no problem.
Once you've got that additional information, we'll know which way this case is going to develop.
My role at the festival was to be one of the paramedics there to look after all the festival goers. And I got a phone call from my colleague to say we had an unresponsive patient. Stephanie was on the stretcher in the first aid tent. She'd already been cannulated at that point by my colleague. We were pushing fluids through her, but I realised very quickly that her temperature was excessively high. Stephanie's temperature was 41.1. The body cannot sustain a temperature of 41.1. So I'd packed a groin under her armpits with ice packs and behind her neck to try and cool her down, to get her body temperature down. The heart rate on our machine was reading anywhere between 170 and 203. And in my career, I've never seen a heart rate that high. I got the local ambulance service on the phone. They were there incredibly quickly. All I could do was try to keep her alive as long as I could to get her to definitive care, which was the hospital.
The investigation into Stephanie's death is ongoing, but with all samples collected, Stephanie can be released to her family.
You knew when Steph was in the room, you just knew. But just being from a little girl, I remember when she was born, you know, I remember going into the living room to hold her, and she had these chubby cheeks and this ginger hair.
She was just life and soul.
She was, yeah. And the amount of like family parties that we've had, and you know, gatherings and stuff, just in the kitchen, and she was always the one, you know, making a funny dance up or, you know, getting everybody going.
Sorry. She's the best.
Your brain can't just process that she's not actually here. She's too young, she's got a baby, she was at a really good point in life.
It's a funny thing, grief, because I just want to know that when it happened, she weren't scared.
When you go back to the last time that you spoke to somebody, because you can't help it, you just do. And the last time I actually spoke to her, and she had me laughing. She was telling me about a story about her going into a nightclub with the baby's backpack on with his nappies and dummies and everything in it, and she got searched on the way in. And she said I danced all night with this backpack on my back, and I was laughing. And then before I was leaving, and because I do it to everybody that I love, I give them a hug and I say, I love you, I love you. And I'm so glad I did it, because that was literally the last time that I seen her.
Fingerprint officers are carrying out investigations to try and identify a man who was found deceased in a house in Blackburn.
See creases.
You see creases, you can see
slight ridge detail.
You can see some ridge detail, but we can't necessarily see any characteristics, which is what we need for the identification. It's not.
No, the detail isn't showing up good enough to get an identification from that. So we're going to try lifting with adhesive tape.
The problem that we've got with this is that visual identification is impossible. Dental identification might be possible, but we've got to find his dentist in order to get the dental records to compare them. DNA is possible, but we need a match to match it against. So all of these are being looked at. The easiest one is fingerprints.
Yeah, it's even worse than the photo of that.
No, we've not been successful. There's just not enough detail.
It's not been possible to obtain fingerprints from this gentleman due to the decomposition. So under these circumstances, what I've now asked for is for the mortuary to take a deep muscle tissue sample from him. The police will collect that from the mortuary and they will submit that for DNA testing. That DNA sample will be compared with the DNA database, and hopefully then we'll be able to confirm the identification of this gentleman.
So I'm just exposing the thighs on this gentleman so that I can get the tissue sample. I'm just looking, this thigh here looks in better condition, so I'm going to get my sample there. Just a case of making a short incision through the skin.
It's important to find out that the deceased is the person that we think we are dealing with, because once the funeral has taken place, if it's a cremation, after that we're past the point of no return. That's why the identification is so important.
I'm just reconstructing this incision that I've made in his leg. Although our chap here is a little worse for wear, we don't want to leave anybody in a worse condition than we found them.
With the DNA samples taken, the cause of death now needs to be established.
So we're just scanning through his head now. Within the head scan, the black is air, so there's a lot more air present. The brain tissue, unfortunately, looks like it has started to deteriorate and decompose. So we will now send these images on to our radiologist, who will interpret them, write up an official report, and then forward that on to the coroner.
As instructed by Dr. Aidley, Coroner's Officer Manager Alice needs to ascertain whether Stephanie Thorpe had water when she became seriously ill at a music festival.
Hello, is that Carl?
Hiya, yeah.
I know it's difficult to talk about, but we need to understand what drinks she'd had prior to entering the festival and what drinks she had whilst at the festival.
An independent report on the dehydration levels has been undertaken by Dr. Mark Clayton, who specialises in this area.
In terms of the evidence that I'm looking at, it's clear that Stephanie ingested a pill at some point during the day. However, there are a number of unpleasant side effects with very high heart rates, so 140, 200 beats a minute. And we see patients present really hot. Temperatures as high as 42, 44 degrees, and it can cause muscle breakdown, and that was probably present in Stephanie's case here. There are lots of factors that can make your use of ecstasy more risky, to make you more at risk of harm. One of those is dehydration. Being dehydrated means that the concentration of things in your blood is higher than it normally would be. It's as simple as that. So if you're dehydrated, your blood volume is lower, and therefore everything in your blood is more concentrated, and that includes your naturally occurring substances, toxins produced by your body, and drugs that you ingest. So Dr. Aidley has asked me to look at the provision of water. There are some reports from the statements that I've read that suggest that there was an inadequate supply of water at the event. Under UK law, the licence holder for the festival, because they're selling intoxicating drinks, alcohol, they must provide free water to those that attend the event. And there has been concern raised from a number of different sources in the evidence that I've read that suggests that there was not enough water on site.
Stephanie Thorpe is a young woman, she's a mother, she has her whole life in front of her, and her death is a tragedy. This case has required significant investigation. It's required toxicology, it's required statements from all of those that were with her on the day, statement from those that treated her from the hospital, and an external report from somebody who can advise on the provision of care in these festivals. Once the evidence has been collected and reviewed, we will decide upon the witnesses, and then this will go forward to an inquest to provide answers for the family.
We have entrusted Stephanie to God's mercy. We now commit her body to the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Love you! We love you!
part of the investigation into Stephanie Thorpe's death, an independent report has been provided to the coroner.
Hello? Hi Carl, it's Alice Swarbrick, Coroner's Officer.
Hiya.
So what they're saying is, it appears that there's a mandatory requirement of the licence to have free water, and this condition wasn't complied with. Although concerning in general, they've not seen any evidence to suggest that Stephanie tried to unsuccessfully obtain water from the event. They're unable to comment whether the issues with the supply of water on site contributed to a dehydration. So although there's information to say that there is a lack of water, that's something that's going to be dealt with separately.
Right.
As the dehydration report could not find any evidence that Stephanie was unable to access water, the water provision at the festival will not form part of the inquest.
The build-up's been harder, so now it's even worse because we've been waiting for so long.
I think I'm scared that we're going to hear something where she could have been saved, and if she could, then things could have been different. I think that's one of my fears.
The way the inquest will work, it's a fact-finding process. We're not here to apportion blame, we're just here to try and determine what's happened. All rise.
Perhaps you could start by explaining whether or not there have been changes in the concentration of ecstasy tablets over, say, the last 5 years, please.
Since the pandemic, there has been a general upswing in the concentration of ecstasy, up to 2 or 3 times the average dose. We normally expect 95 to 100 milligrams, and these were up to 250 to 300 milligrams per tablet.
What I'm interested in here is, how does the ecstasy affect Stephanie?
So in Stephanie's specific context, she was dehydrated. The day was hot and the day was humid, which means that her body's ability to lose heat was impaired. I don't have good evidence either way to say that she was dancing excessively or energetically, but if she were, she will be producing more heat. But once you cross that threshold of around that 20-degree value of temperature, then suddenly the risk of harm from the ecstasy increases. So there are multiple factors at play.
This is a situation where a young woman is taking a tablet of ecstasy that she doesn't know the strength of, and it's combined with other contributing factors of the heat of the day and exercise. In my view, this is a death that nobody intended, and so Stephanie Lauren Thorpe died an accidental death.
The family has asked to make a statement.
We know and aware as a family that Stephanie on that day took recreational drugs like thousands of other festival goers. The question is, why did this happen to just her? We feel that there is going to be a lot of lessons to be learnt. So with that said, we know it is most likely going to be one of the factors of her death, but we can reassure you that this does not and never will define her of who she was.
I will take the points of learning that are peripheral to Stephanie's death, because it's important that festivals are as safe as they can be, and that the authorities who license these are aware of events that have occurred, can take these into account in the future planning and authorization and licensing of such events. And I will be writing to the various authorities involved.
Radiologists are trying to establish a cause of death for the so far unidentified man.
You can tell from the scan that there's a lot of gas, abnormal gas around, which we see with decomposition, and that is going to, like it or not, compromise the scan in terms of diagnostic value. All the black areas here are gas. What we can see here is the heart and two of the main coronary arteries that supply the heart muscle. There's a significant area of calcification in the left anterior descending coronary artery, and also a further area of focal heavy calcification in the circumflex coronary artery. So what we do know is that this gentleman has certainly got evidence of coronary artery disease, coronary artery calcification. So that is a cause of death based on what we're finding.
The coroner's team has also been working on the man's identity.
The coroner's now in receipt of the forensic result report. The deep muscle tissue taken from the deceased has been compared with the DNA database. It has confirmed that the DNA findings support the view that the deceased is the gentleman that we thought we were dealing with.
In this case, the principal difficulty was identifying who had died. The cause of death was relatively straightforward. That was from the CT scan. But now we've established his identity, the case can be closed, and there is no need for an inquest.
With a formal identity confirmed, coroner's officers were able to contact a next of kin. They are happy for the story to be told, but have asked for it to remain anonymous.
Today's Stephanie's 33rd birthday, and obviously it's the first one since she's passed, and only 7 months has gone past. And as it's her first one that she's not with us, obviously it's going to hurt the worst. So we've just thought that we'd all come together. It's obviously looking after Alfie and keeping her memory alive. So then, he'll always know how wonderful she was. And how much of a character she was. And I say it a million times a day. Just once seen, never forgotten. No one will ever forget. And we'll make sure of that.
You don't get to choose the timing of your death.
We were supposed to be working and he didn't turn up.
This is completely dislocated, and this is leading to constriction of the spinal cord. The sharp's basically he's squeezed past her.
Has Joyce had some sort of medical event, or has she sustained some traumatic injuries which have caused her death?